Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's pre-lunch time, so everybody must be wanting to get out, but hopefully we'll make this fun and interesting for you. Uh, my name is Rudra Dalmia. We started Green Frontier Capital 2 years ago, and we are investing in the climate change ecosystem as described. But today so within climate change, there's, of course, the obvious bits, which is the EV mobility system. Then there's the food-based systems and the agri-tech and financing systems that need to be funded and grown in order to make an impact on carbon neutrality and carbon mitigation. Today, we have three fantastic founders, all of whom we have invested in and backed, all of whom are part of the EV ecosystem, so to speak, but not the obvious EV side, but it's these guys are all real stars, profitable, hopefully very soon, but supremely growing very, very fast, and building things that are not obvious, but extremely useful. I would like to request, starting with Samir, all the panelists to introduce themselves one by one, and then we'll get into questions and answers.
Thanks, Rudra, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Samir Agarwal. I'm the founder of Refin. Refin is a digital lending platform that provides loans or financing for electric vehicles. We've been doing this for about 4 years now. We financed over 13,000 electric vehicles so far, primarily in tier 2, tier 3 cities. In fact, about 95% of our customers are in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And what we find is that about 85% of our customers are also financially excluded. And financing of electric vehicles obviously helps the environment, but also helps the customers a lot on achieving economic independence as well. And what we find is about most of our customers, for them, their net take-home earning goes up by about 2 to 2.5 times driving electric three-wheelers in small towns. Right? So there's a huge, obviously, climate impact, but also a huge social and economic impact on the drivers. And so far, the drivers we financed have cumulatively driven about 250 million zero-emission kilometers. Right? So again, huge positive impact on the environment.
Thanks, Rudra. A very good afternoon. I'm Avinash. I'm the co-founder and CEO of an organization by name Electric Pay. If any of you is or has thought about getting an electric scooter, because, well, it's affordable and green, however, has been worried by the fact that, hey, listen, where will I charge it? How will I pay for it? How do I know I'm actually paying for what I'm using? Okay. And if suddenly I'm stranded on the road somewhere, correct? What will I do? Right? That's the problem that we are solving. Electric Pay, think of us like a book my show of EV charging, where you can find, charge, and then also pay for charging your electric two-wheeler, four-wheeler at any charging or even swapping station. Simply put, we are that.
Okay.
Thanks, Rudra. At Battery Smart, we are trying to solve for a couple of deterrents to EV adoption. We believe that charging downtime and the recurring capex problem around batteries is something that is deterring people from adopting EVs, especially in the commercial segments. Batteries are 50% of the cost, a recurring capital expense, and not everyone can afford to do that. And the other is charging downtime. A commercial user cannot wait 4 hours just to charge his or her vehicle. That means loss of income and lost opportunity for them. And we believe battery swapping is the answer to solving this problem. We are primarily targeting light commercial vehicles, two-wheelers doing gig economy, or three-wheelers either doing passenger or cargo. We are India's largest battery swapping network. We currently are in 14 cities, 450 odd locations, serving 30,000 plus battery swaps every day. Vehicles on our batteries cover over 1 million electric kilometers every day. So far we have contributed to saving around 20,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emission, and this is just in the last 2.5 years of our journey.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. I'd like to start with Samir. So Samir, since you've built a EV financing business, how come you ignored the most obvious areas of EV financing and went to the small towns and the hinterland and tier 2 and tier 3? And how hard was that journey versus the obvious choices of Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, which is going to see EV adoption, but on the cars side? And would love to hear about your thought process and how you started and where all you are right now.
Sure. Um, so we are currently present in 15 states, and we are quite dominant in UP, Bihar, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, etc. And a lot of our customers, as I said earlier as well, come from tier 2, tier 3 towns. So I'm talking really small towns like Sultanpur in UP, talking about Samastipur in Bihar. So that's the kind of areas we operate in. Why did we choose small towns? We saw a huge opportunity, especially with the low-speed three-wheelers or the e-rickshaws, where basically most of these small towns had no last-mile mobility options, and then they directly leapfrogged to electric three-wheelers. And apart from that, the economic impact on the driver was so high that their income was going up by 2.5 times compared to anything else they could do in those towns. They were becoming asset owners, and their economic status was really going up significantly. And we realized that, because of that impact, this segment is going to scale quite significantly all across the country. So that was, and then there was, from a financing standpoint, we also saw that because of that economic impact on the driver, their ability to repay goes up significantly because the earnings are more, and of course they want to retain that asset, right? So there was an automatic risk mitigant built into it. And both those aspects of scale and risk mitigation as a financer that really attracted us a lot. But of course, it came with a lot of challenges. Building penetration, building distribution in small towns is extremely challenging. Also making the business commercially viable in small towns is extremely challenging. And what we realized is that ultimately the customer segment is so excluded. They don't have any banking transactions. They don't have digital habits. They don't have credit history. So we had to build technology to underwrite these customers. So we built actually a very unique kind of a platform where we look at things like psychometrics to assess intention to repay. We do biometrics. We've embedded telematics in all the vehicles that we finance. So technology has played a huge role in kind of helping us both underwrite and mitigate a lot of risks post-lending as well.
Fantastic. One of the key reasons why we really liked Samir and his business was, one, he's catering to a segment that is completely underserved, will be ignored by all the big boys. But a very interesting fact point, and I'd like Samir to tell us more about it. How come the e-rickshaw segment is not a branded segment? Like, why don't we know any branded e-rickshaw names? Like, how come all the big boys missed the boat?
Well, actually, they didn't miss the boat. They did try to get into it, but they were just not able to create viable products. That's the harsh reality, right? Ultimately, I think I always believe that EV segment is a new segment. You're creating a new market and a new ecosystem has to be built. To assume that existing infrastructure, existing distribution will work in that segment, I think is a wrong assumption to make. Even the product design has to be grounds up. So I'll give you an example. Most of these drivers, they want to optimize passenger load. Right? So, which means that an e-rickshaw can seat 4 people at the back, but they'd like to put 6 people at the back. Right? So the product design has to be such that there's more space at the back than for the driver. Some of the big boys made products that were very comfortable for the driver, but not so much for the passengers. Right? So I think all of that has to be built grounds up, and also from a distribution standpoint. The kind of dealer margins, etc., that exist in this space are much higher than a traditional ICE vehicle distribution. And when traditional OEMs started using their existing distribution networks, there was a huge gap over there, and they had to kind of go with the traditional model, and the other newer OEMs were able to beat them over there as well. So both product and distribution became a challenge. So I think it's about, again, I think this is about building grounds up, and in fact, it's very surprising today that from a three-wheeler perspective, market share of electric three-wheelers, of all three-wheelers sold in India, is about 52%. And the largest three-wheeler sellers in India are electric three-wheeler manufacturers, and most of those names people have never heard.
Which is very surprising. I'd like to, move to Battery Smart, which is actually powering the e-rickshaw ecosystem. And another thing we realized while we went through our journey of understanding how to invest in this mobility ecosystem, which is greening the sort of India. And we realized that India is not going to adopt green technology because it's cool or it's needed or any of those things. We realized that it's going to adopt it because it has to be cost effective. And it's players like Battery Smart and Refin that are actually making it cost effective and utilitarian. Nobody in the hinterland of India cares about how Delhi breathes its air. What we care about, what they care about is how does this particular technology make a difference in their life. And it's quite remarkable to see versus the US where people will pay 30% premium on a Tesla because it's cool to have it and it's got, of course, it's got amazing features, etc. But there is that factor that came with the Prius as well. But you will not see that. The total cost of ownership is key, and how it makes a difference to their lives is key. So with that, I'd like to move to Pulkit and understand how he picked his target market, and also understand the pipeline. What is the big challenge in this on the supply side, and how are you handling those challenges?
Sure. So I'll actually start from where Sameer left in terms of e-rickshaw market, because that's least understood is what I've found, but also the largest in India in terms of the installed base of electric vehicles. And to add to all the points that Sameer said, it was the real Indian jugaad, to be honest, when it came, right? Today there are 700 plus manufacturers doing this, assembling different parts, but 99% of e-rickshaws are still being sold with lead acid batteries. And the lead acid was never made for EVs. It has been existing since 1870s, and it's the same which we have seen in our childhoods for home inverters and so on, right? Now, this was to fill the first mile, last mile mobility gap. The capex was half of a CNG auto. The opex was as well half of an CNG auto or a petrol auto, and that is why all the tier 2, tier 3 cities just got flooded with them. But you'll see a pattern to it, right? You'll see them between Rajasthan and Northeast. You'll see zero in Karnataka and Maharashtra, right? Just the state never allowed them, right? And there are different reasons that are given, whether it's traffic nuance or they move slower, but they're moving fine in Delhi. And the population of e-rickshaws is almost twice of CNG auto right now in Delhi. They're being used by 70 million people in India for first mile, last mile. So these were just the stats around it. But to answer your question, why we picked e-rickshaw segment as the first go-to market was primarily because of the numbers, and the problem that we are trying to solve is much more aggravated for this consumer class. Lead acid has a 6-month life, 9 month at max, the best brands probably 12 months, right? Which means there's a recurring capex cycle within a year. And these guys are like daily wage earners, they can't really afford that capex cycle. The second problem is it takes 12 hours to charge them. There's no way to fast charge it, right? And it gives a limited 60 to 80 kilometer of range. So their earnings are capped. They cannot run more than 80 kilometers, which means they cannot earn more than say 800 or 900 rupees a day. You remove these two problems and everyone is attracted. Today we have around 13,000 e-rickshaws that are swapping with us every day. Almost 7 to 8% of e-rickshaws of Delhi swap with us. And there are another 50,000 on the wait list, right? So that's almost 50% population of e-rickshaws waiting to be on this platform. The constraints to this business is not demand, because obviously there's a very strong value proposition. Our monthly retention rates and churn rates is less than 0.1%. So that kind of speaks in itself around the value proposition. The challenge is supply itself. India as a country is not manufacturing cells. All of it is being imported primarily from China. The batteries are then assembled in India, right? We will start production by 2025, PLI is on, and all of those things are happening, but we've kind of missed the bandwagon there, right? And China started in 2016. They actually went ahead and banned lead acid at that point just to give demand to these gigawatt-hour plants that came up. And they're currently supplying more than 70% of the world. Now, the constraint becomes supply itself at a macro level for our country as well, not for a small company like us, but for the entire country, because we are dependent on imports for lithium ion, not just raw material, but the cells itself today. As of last month, for example, we bought close to 10% of NMC batteries that were made in our category in India, right? So if at our scale we are hitting those ceilings, imagine what our country will face if we have to actually reach the goals of 80 million EVs on road by 2030, right? The other constraint, obviously, for a business like us is this is extremely capital intensive. We are actually taking away 50% of capex of all the EVs that we are serving upon us. right? So this business becomes extremely capital intensive. You have to continue deploying more capital in more batteries to serve every subsequent customer, right? This is not a asset class that lenders would understand today or would want to underwrite at a large scale with unknown life, unknown salvage period. And those are some risks that a company like us has to take today before we can instill that confidence in the ecosystem. And that is what we are trying to do. We have close to 80 megawatt hour of battery capacity installed and being circulated in our network today.
Amazing. So what exactly do you do? What's your customer journey like when you start? Like, because battery swapping, people understand that you create kiosks where somebody can go and swap their battery. How do you get to know the customer, and what do you do for them? How does that start?
Sure. So there are two kinds of customers. There's someone who is looking to buy an EV, and the choice he has is to buy a EV at full price or probably a EV without battery at 50%. If chooses to do the second and subscribes with Battery Smart, start swapping with us. The other customer is the e-rickshaw guys we're talking about. Every few months they're looking for a replacement. Instead of buying a lead asset, they just subscribe with us, start swapping batteries. All our batteries are obviously lithium-ion, much advanced, IoT enabled, so on, very lightweight, easier to swap, and one battery which is interoperable, because that's the key. You cannot have like 10 different kinds of batteries to serve every customer. You have just one kind of battery which works with two-wheelers, three-wheelers, larger cargo vehicles. It's modular, one pack for a two-wheeler, two packs for a three-wheeler, interoperable across models and makes. We have 200 plus models which are running on the platform using the same kind of batteries.
Fantastic. So guys, Pulkit has had an amazing journey. Battery Smart is a very young company, growing extremely fast, and their valuations jumped 10x in 2 years, and they still have a wait list. So it tells you the demand for their business. And a lot of people who are investing in the EV ecosystem are actually don't know that the real conversion is going to happen, and where the total cost of ownership is low, which I'm going back to what I said earlier, is going to happen at the tier 3 level, the e-rickshaws, where a $500 battery, $500 battery is 50% of the cost of the vehicle, but it makes a dramatic difference in people's livelihood and lives. With that, I'd like to move to our third panelist. Avinash has set up a very interesting business using Internet of Things, understanding the EV ecosystem. He used to work with one of the large mobility players in India before this, got a fantastic team, and is building an overlay of discoverability, charging, and payments, as he explained. The overlay is very interesting, but Avinash, I'd like to understand, when you talk about discoverability, why would I not discover a charging station on a Google Maps, and how are you going to beat that? Like, what is the utility of you over Google Maps? Could you please explain that?
Sure. So, what Google can do is take you to a charging station. However, what happens is every charging station, and what is happening is in India, electric petrol pumps, quote unquote, are popping up at societies, in corporate parks, at kirana walas, because all you need is electricity, correct, and a way to commercially sell it. And therefore, once through Google you reach to, let's say, the nearest kirana wala to top up your electric scooter or your car, there you are required to again download a separate application of that particular charger. Now, also, and therefore what happens is you end up downloading, let's say, 27, 30 different apps each time. And I'm going to now make a slightly bold statement, but I'm sure a lot of us will agree. Fundamentally, India is a low-trust society. All of us, I'm sure, have gone to a petrol pump to refuel. What's the first thing that the boy or the girl who's dispensing petrol says to us? Sir, zero check cheskondi. Zero check kar lijiye. And sir or madam हमेशा zero check करते हैं. आप zero check ही नहीं करते सर. वो dispensing unit को घूरते देखते भी रहते हैं. That कि उतना पेट्रोल डाल भी रहे कि नहीं डाल रहे जितना मैंने मांगा था. Now, imagine the problem of A, having multiple apps on your phone to actually use a particular charging station, which you have just reached by using Google. Having multiple apps does not reduce range anxiety, it actually increases range anxiety. You're constantly struggling कि इसमें मिलेगा क्या charger, इसमें मिलेगा क्या charger, इसमें मिल जाए please. Correct? One. And two, the problem of low trust. That which one of these apps is actually trustworthy that I can pay for my usage through. That's the problem that we solve by being that one, overall super app. So to give a simple parallel, think of us like a Swiggy or a Zomato. Right? What Swiggy or Zomato does is gets you the food from the same restaurant, but it creates a layer of trust because they take care of certifications, quality, delivery times, etc., etc. Right? And they not just give you the food, they also make sure that the payment goes through. And if there are any issues, any customer complaints, etc., all of that is handled by Swiggy. So Electric Pay is that. Using Electric Pay, you can seamlessly go to any third-party charging point, use it, pay for it through Electric Pay. Right? That's something that we are building, and that's how we differentiate ourselves versus Google. How Google helps us is Google collaborates with us. For navigation, for example, we work with Google. Payment gateways, again, are provided through Google. So they are more collaborators for us, but this is how we differentiate ourselves. And to give you some, perspective, as we speak, there are about 10,000 charging points live on the Electric Pay app. We are on the Android, we are on the iOS. I urge, in fact, all of us to please do download the app and try it out. There are about 20,000 signed up customers. Every month we do about 20,000 bookings on the platform. So that's the fundamental difference between a Google and an Electric Pay.
So what is your go-to-market like? How are you getting these people to sign up with you? And how do you first get, I have a building, a commercial building or a housing society. What do I call you to do, and how do I find you, one, and why do I find you?
Correct. So why is this? Imagine you're living in an apartment and you're staying on, let's say, the 15th floor or the 5th floor, and you have a scooter. Now, in your society, how will you charge the scooter? You can't carry the scooter on the 5th floor. You can't dangle a wire from the 5th floor. In most apartments in India, scooters, in fact, don't even have dedicated parkings. A car may have a dedicated parking, but even that parking is taken up once you park a hatchback or a sedan. There's no space for a scooter. Even if you have a dedicated parking, you really don't know where your meter is. I can ask 10 people in this hall, do you know where your electricity meter is actually, if you're staying in an apartment society? So finding your meter and then pulling a cable to install a charging point in your dedicated parking lot, if you have one, also is a very hassle-prone process, because then you'll have to deal with the society's so-called management committee, because you're drilling through other people's walls, etc., etc. So now you're stuck with a scooter, you're on the 5th floor, how do you charge it? Right? That's where Electric Pay comes in. How do you get a charging point? There's a simple request a charging point feature in our app. It catches your geolocation, A. So now we know that you need a charging facility. That's exactly how Airtel, we basically essentially copied what Airtel did when they went to Delhi. They went to every society and said, listen, whoever wants Airtel line, fiber optic line in the society, just let us know. So that's how Airtel got the heat maps, where demand exists, A. We do the exact same thing. B, once you request for a charging point, correct? What we do is we act essentially like a marketplace. There are enough number of people who are willing to invest in setting up a charging point in your society. It's a good business, correct? That's where we act essentially like a marketplace. We connect A to B. We say, hey, listen, this society needs a charging point, you are willing to set up a charging point, please go ahead and set it up. Right? So that's how you get to electric pay, one. Two, that's how then we enable a charging point being set up there. Correct? In some cases, if we are not able to find vendors, we also help in seeding some chargers in the society from our side also, because it's important to invest in creating the infrastructure. Right? And once the charging point is set up, you can use the electric pay app to just use and pay for it. The electricity is used from the society's common electricity line, correct? And all of the money that we collect is transferred to the society's association at the end of the month. It keeps it very, very clean.
And you take a cut from that.
And we take a small cut from that.
So you're essentially an analytics play because you'll have so much data eventually, and you'll know who's charging what, when, where. And what about the IoT device that you talk about in terms of discoverability? How does that help you? And what does it do exactly?
So now think of it like this. To charge a scooter or a car, you need electricity. There is common electricity available in the building through which the lift of the building is working, for example, or the motor of the building is working. Now you have electrons available, but there is no way for the building owner, be it a corporate park or be it a mall or be it a society, there is no way for them to find out who's used it, how much has someone used, and how does the building collect money from the resident. It's an impossible task to even collect maintenance from flats. Even I default on my maintenance bills, correct? Now, therefore, what happens is there's a smart IoT device which got invented, which is what we actually brought out to the Indian market. This is called a LAC. This is called a low-cost AC charging point. Essentially, think of it like a smart meter. The difference between this smart plug and any regular plug that we use to charge our phones is the on-off button of this plug is in the application using a QR code. Now, how does one charge? Every phone comes with a phone charger. Every scooter comes with its own charger inside the dicky. Like there's always like one end will always go into the wall. It's very, very similar. So you find one of these smart plugs which is attached to the building's common electricity line. You park your scooter in front of it. The way you remove your charger from your laptop bag, you remove the scooter or the car's charger from the dicky. You plug the charger inside. You switch on the plug using a QR code and application. Now we know who's switched it on. You start charging using the app. You go home, have dinner, you go back to office, etc., etc. Once the charging is done, you come back, you remove the plug, put it inside the vehicle. You stop charging. The smart meter is an IoT device. It captures how much electricity has been consumed. It has a SIM card inside it, so it communicates that data to us. So now we know who's used it, how much, and the payment is also collected.
Excellent. Thank you. So just before we wrap up, I'd like to ask 10 seconds to 10, 15, 20 seconds to each guy. Samir, what do you measure? And what is your next year's goal on that measuring yardstick? What's the number one thing that you like to measure, and what are you aiming for next year?
So I think for us, the key measurement is how many vehicles we are financing, because ultimately everything depends on that. We have a very simple plan. Every year we should finance 5 times more vehicles than what we did last year.
So where are you guys at, and where will you be next year at the same time?
So far we've financed about 13,000. By end of next year, we should be around 75, 80,000.
And what does that mean in terms of rupees?
So we've financed about 170 crores of vehicles so far, or loans rather. And then we should be getting to about 1,000 crores of loans by the end of next year, next financial year.
And what is your default rate?
It's 0.6%.
Fantastic. So you've basically combined microfinancing in India, which is the underbanked and under-credit served,
Yeah.
and giving them electric mobility. Fantastic. Thank you. Pulkit, same question to you. What do you measure, and what would you like to see next year, target-wise?
So we like to measure number of EVs we have enabled. We are currently at 13,000 odd number. I'm not a fan of projections. So I'll not give a number for next year. I can tell you where was last year. We were at around 100.
You were at 100 and now you're 13,000.
Correct.
Fantastic.
We measure the number of chargers that we have on our platform and the number of bookings that happen. Today we are at about 10,000 chargers, doing about 12,000, 15,000 bookings a month. By the end of next year, we'll take it to 100,000 chargers and doing about a million, shy of a million bookings.
Fantastic. Thank you guys. Any questions, anything where we can call it today? Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I'm Srinivas from Research and Innovation Circle, Hyderabad. I just have a quick question to Electric Pay. The question is, how do you ensure, even if I have to plug in my mobile phone into a charging, with any charger?
Could you get the
Okay.
mic closer, sir?
Yeah,
Yes, perfect.
yeah. So even if I have to plug in my phone into anyone else's charger, I think twice. I'm not sure about the quality. Is it good, bad, right? So when Electric Pay is developing some kind of a layer on top of a charging station which already exists, how do you ensure that the quality of that charger fits my electric scooter? That's the primary question, right? So the hardware should be compatible to my electric scooter or electric vehicle. That's one question. The second question, partially you have addressed, but I would still like to put it up front, is the quality element of trust here, right? How do I ensure that when you charge, say, 10 rupees for a unit of electricity, that unit of electricity is actually transferred, right? Just like I'm looking at a petrol pump, I'm also looking at, okay, आपने एक unit डाला है, बोला है, तो एक unit मेरे गाड़ी में भी आना चाहिए. It's shown in my vehicle, but I really have to get that trust. So these are two questions.
Yes, both very valid questions. I'll answer the second one first. Each of these IoT devices, which I just described, which is a smart plug, has a meter inside it, correct, which is certified, which has the same accuracy as your, the same meter which goes inside.
Utility meter.
Yeah, exactly, the TSS DCL, correct? And ISO certified, etc. Right? And therefore, it measures exactly the amount of electricity which has flown through. That's one. Two, from a hardware compatibility standpoint, so like I explained, a phone comes with a phone charger or a laptop comes with a laptop charger. Every EV also comes with a charger. One end of the charger always has 3 pins. Right? The other end has something else. Correct? It's very similar to your iPhone charger versus your Samsung charger, for example. Correct? But one end always goes inside the wall. So by default, it has become interoperable. It's very, very similar to an Android charger or a iPhone charger. One end always goes inside the wall. Correct. Then what we do is we make that information available on the app. That if you're driving a Nexon, for example, the Nexon electric car, we make that information available on the app that this charging station has an external charger which is compatible with your Nexon. Versus if you're driving a Kona, for example, correct? It tells you that this is compatible or this is not compatible. So you have full information. Thank you.